Here we go on another adventure with Moonpie Creations. You never know which way this is going to go. So originally this project was going to be a humidor, but I kind of changed it around. I found out that I have another grandchild on the way, and we have a tradition in the Moon family. We are going to make a memory box. And I know what you're thinking, what the hell's a memory box? Well, let me explain. But before we start talking about what a memory box is, let me talk about this wood right here. This is black cherry. I harvested this after a storm in 2015. I milled it with my Alaska chainsaw mill. I think I have it somewhere on my channel. If I do, I'll put it up in the corner up here so you can go watch it. But don't go off yet. A little known fact about Moonpie Creations, 99% of my wood is harvested from downed trees. I don't go out and cut stuff. If the storm comes through, people call me, I bring it over and I mill it up and I dry it, and that's what I use. So this wood has been sitting since 2014, 15, I don't know, somewhere around there. So I know it's good and dry. But it can still twist and warp and cup and bow and all this other stuff. There's a lot of movement that can happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten it on both sides. You've seen me use the planer on one. This one was a little bit different, a little bit more warped. So I'm going to use the CNC to flatten one side of it, and then we'll throw it over onto the jointer. You'll notice I have the dust shoe on this thing, and there's not much of the chips and dust getting out. This is the difference between this video and the last video. I actually went over to my computer and built out a run for the CNC to go up and down this piece of wood to flatten it. I still haven't trimmed it out though, you can see by the lines. It's really important to have a flat side when you're going through your planer, because it will, if there's a bow in it, it will copy that bow and the wood will come up a little bit. You'll get snipe or the board won't be flat. And then I will sticker it and set it down and let it sit for about a week. In this case, I let it sit for about 3 weeks to acclimate to the shop. Otherwise, you could get bowing and cupping and twisting. And all this could happen if I build this box too fast. Now, back to what a memory box is. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a box to put memories in. And these have inscriptions on them, like a Bible verse or something very pertinent to what we want to impart to our grandchildren. But we also put their name on it, and then we put a lock on it, hinges and all that stuff. And then everybody can send letters and put them into these boxes, or items, or anything they want. And it's sealed up until our grandchild's 18 or 21, whatever the parents want to do. And once they turn that age, they can open it up and they have a wealth of treasure and knowledge from everyone that's been in their lives, or even those who parted before the child turned 18 or 21. So admittedly, I've been slacking on making these boxes. This one's going to be for our newest grandchild, but I also have to make a few more for my other grandchildren that have been born. Well, one of them's 15, so I need to make them one. Yes, my granddaughter is 15. I haven't made her box yet, and it doesn't matter. I know what you're thinking. Well, she only has 3 years until she opens it. But the thing is, these memory boxes can be used throughout their life to collect significant memories, to make them remember things. That's why we started this, so our grandchildren will remember us. Put letters in there for it, and I give them items of significance. Okay, now that you know what we're making, let's go ahead and get back to the build. What I'm doing here is I'm making the side panel. And the box originally was going to be a humidor, and it was still a humidor at this point, and it doesn't become a memory box until about halfway through the build. When I cut down this wood, there was some checking and some cracking on the wood. You can see right there, I filled it with CA glue. Not a big deal, you don't see it in the end, it just looks like grain. There's all sorts of ways to put these boxes together. You can use box joints, but what we're going to use here is a miter joint. And I found the best way to do a miter joint is just like this. You put it against the fence, you push it through, and it gives you consistent lengths. It's probably best to use a miter sled, but I didn't have time to make one of those. Well, I guess I did, but I just didn't want to do it. But as long as you're using consistent pressure and putting your push block in the middle of the piece of wood using a rising knife, you'll be fine. It was at this point that I decided I wanted to jazz this box up a little bit. So I grabbed some of this Burl that I had up on the top shelf. I got this from Worldwide Burls on Instagram. And man, I think this actually jumped the box up in elegance a little bit. So I'm cutting a little bit off right here to use for the top. And like I said, at this point, I'm still thinking about making a humidor. So every box that's a humidor, the best thing to use is some MDF for the lid portion, underside of the lid. Keeps it stable. Also, you can glue stuff to it like the cedar. But in this instance, I'm going to use this not only as the underside of the lid, but for a mold. So that's what you see me doing right here. I started thinking about what color to use for the top here, but nothing beats black with this Burl for elegance. For real, I think this black onyx is really going to make this box pop. So I went back and looked at a lot of my videos, and I realized that there's two colors I used a lot over the years, and that's this black onyx, and the other one is purple, a royal purple. I think both of those are very nice colors, and people really enjoy seeing things made out of them. So I guess that's why I've made so many bowls like that. You guys have seen me use the heat gun many times before. All this is doing is kind of melting up that resin, making it more viscous so I can get into the small cracks and there's no air bubbles. I really can't tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing in this scene. I don't know why I was trying to take off the sides. I should have just ran it straight through my table saw. I could have put it against the fence. It was flat, and I could have just ran it through and cut all these pieces off. I don't always understand why I do things, and I just know that it pisses future Ken off. But present Ken was having fun with this. It was kind of cathartic. So I'll let future Ken in the video deal with this. I'm going to go ahead and square up the sides on my table saw sled here. Then I'm going to put it through the drum sander to get it flat. Now what I'm doing here is I'm cutting it to a rough dimension. And here's another one of those, what the hell was I thinking? I decided, hey, I needed a piece of lumber to do the bottom of the box. So I grabbed this piece of oak, which doesn't match at all, so I don't even know why I was thinking. And I cut it down to make a panel for the bottom of the box. Before I glue the box up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some rabbets in each side. The bottom side's a little bit deeper than the top side. I've got a plan to do something cool on the top of the box. Sure, I could use my table saw to do this, but this is fairly easy. I just put a larger bit in there and bump it up for the bottom and down for the top. Then I have to sand the inside before we do anything else. Now here's a pro tip for you that I didn't follow. Go ahead and use some painter's tape and tape the miters on the inside so any glue squeeze out will peel right off once you cut the box open. I don't do that, and I regret it. So this glue up doesn't go quite as planned. I'm using the bottom clamp right there. It's a ratchet strap, got it from Harbor Freight, works perfect. Now the top clamp I'm going to use is another one I got from Temu, and it is a piece of no other way to put it. It's garbage. It doesn't tighten up. You can see me. I have trouble, and I don't show you everything. I don't show it, but when I try to tighten it up here and I kind of mess with it, it all falls apart. So after a little while, I start thinking about it and saying, hey, why don't I use the other piece of black cherry that I have sitting next to my planer for the bottom? So I start cutting it up, plane it up, get it all ready for the glue up. Now it's time to glue the bottom and the top onto here. And I know it looked like it was really tight, but this thing has to have a really good seal. But it's at this time that I made the decision to transfer this over to being my grandson's. Yep, that's right. It's going to be my grandson. Make it into his memory box. And that's what I decided to start doing here. Now it's a very tall box, no doubt. But I think it'll be good. And I've got some plans for under the lid. You can see right here, I inset that Burl and resin piece for the top. I can feel the woodworkers right now going, well, what about seasonal expansion? You need to put some splines in that box for sure. Well, that's what I'm doing right here, so no need to worry. These are going to be extra wide ones, and we're going to use a little bit of Burl that I had up on the shelf that I used from a different project. I told you I had something special for the top, and here it is. I'm going to cut this thing into kind of a, I don't even know, a facet, I guess it would be called. But I'm going to let you guys make a determination at the end whether you think this makes this box pop or if it just ruins the whole thing. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some of these splines here. And I learned my lesson on that jewelry box, and I clean up the glue so there's not as much glue when I go to sand. Let me go ahead and give you another pro tip that I'm not going to heed myself. Take a playing card and put it on the other side of the saw as you saw, and you won't saw into the box like I did right there. That's okay. I'll sand that out. You won't even notice when it's done, but I do it a few more times. And I also break some of these Burl splines, and there's like little gaps that I'm going to have to fill sooner or later. I guess the lesson learned from using the Burl for the spline, Burl is very brittle. Since the grain goes every which way, it breaks a lot easier than a regular piece of wood that has good grain structure in it. Should I have used them for splines? Maybe not, because as I said, they are more brittle. So if you like sanding footage, I can give you sanding footage. I've got about 2 hours worth of sanding footage on this box, but I'm not going to show you that much. I think we're going to go ahead and split off and cut this top off. But before I skip forward, just know that this is not the finishing sanding. This is the pre-finished sanding, and I'm only doing 120 grit. I told you I'd give you a preview of what that Burl looks like in these splines, and here it is. Let me give you a little close-up here. Like I told you, there's little gaps that I'm going to have to fix. I could have shown you this one, and you'd never be the wiser. I had a little bit of issue taking the top off as it leaned over and it kind of messed up a little bit. So I took a long piece of 120 sandpaper and I taped it to this flat board, and I start going back and forth, and that's just going to smooth it out. And it does a pretty good job, believe it or not. So on the top, I want to keep that sharp edge right there on that bevel. So I'm going to sand that by hand because there are saw marks on it. If I were to use the orbital sander on this, I would take a big risk of rounding over those corners, and I want fairly good corners on this. Believe it or not, I've got to flatten the bottom a little bit. The board that I put in there kind of protruded out a little bit, and I went to go put it in my planer, but believe it or not, it's 1/10 of an inch, not even 1/10 of an inch too high to get into my planer. This is the underside of the lid, and I told you I had the plans for it. Originally, this piece of plywood right here with the holes in it was going to hold my moisture packs inside the underside of the lid. But a little bit of ingenuity, you'll see where it says Mom and Dad, and on the other side it says Pop and Yaya. We're going to put that on the underside, and that's where our letters are going to go for my son and his wife and me and my wife. Originally, I was going to use some regular hinges on this, but I decided to go ahead and try some of these box hinges where they're recessed into the lid and the box. I watched a few videos on how to do this, and I thought maybe it would be super simple, straightforward. That was not the case. These were a lot more difficult to install than you would imagine. And I have never done this before, so I decided to use my chisel, and we'll see how that works out. At this point, I start thinking there has to be an easier way to do this. So I just finish off that little part and I grab my router and I just want to route out a majority of the wood there, making sure that it's at the right depth, and that worked a lot better. Then I can just clean it up with my chisel. These hinges have a little support piece that kind of go into the box as you close it. They were a lot more difficult to do than I thought they would be. I probably won't use these hinges again. When I moved to the other side, disaster struck. I wasn't videoing, but I hit the chisel right there and it just went right through the piece. So I'm going to have to glue that back. A little tight bond, a nail to get it in the cracks, and some clamps, and everything is nice and new. Now that I'm committed to these hinges, I'm going to go ahead and drill out that support piece cavity that I needed to have on the bottom and the top of the box. And making sure this is all aligned, and then putting in these cavities that originally I thought would have to go straight down, but they don't. They actually have to go to the back too, are a lot harder to do than I thought. Lining up these hinges and these support brackets and the holes and everything is almost impossible. And to tell you the truth, I didn't get it perfect, but you know what they say, good enough for government work. Let me go ahead now and address the elephant in the room. Yes, I am not taking this box apart. I attempted to take it apart, but the screws for these hinges are extremely small and they strip out when you try to pull them back out. I really don't know what it is about these screws, but I just destroyed 3 of them trying to get them back out. You probably also noticed that I haven't put a latch on it. Well, I've ordered the latch. It'll be here in a couple of days and then I'll slap it on there. Now back to sanding. I'm going to sand this thing up to about 320 on the sides, but on the top, I'm going to go up to 1200 grit. That'll give me a good smooth surface on the top. Some may say what I'm doing here is controversial. I'm going to spray this with a polyurethane just to seal it up because I don't have any sanding sealer handy. Because without conditioning the wood, your finish gets really splotchy and your wood sucks that finish in. Now I have to re-sand the box down, and what we're going to do is we're going to pump it with water between the grits. We're going to get it prepared to put the hasp on, and then also go ahead and engrave my grandson's name on it and a Bible verse on the bottom. Then we'll hit it with the last finish where we're going to use rubium monocoat. I know a few of you are asking, why do you hit it with water? Well, that's called popping the grain, and what it does is it lifts the grain, and then I sand it down a little bit more, and it gives me a better finish when I'm done. I know somebody out there is going to notice that I use polished brass for the hinges, and when you see this hasp that I'm using, a lock, it is brushed brass. So I did use two different ones. It's hard to find the polished brass in these, but don't worry, no one's going to notice. It's going to look great, and I think this lock was a perfect decision on my part for this box. I'm using the lock itself to put the holes in here. What I'm going to do is mark them, and then I'm going to go ahead and drill them out, and then I will screw in the screws. Pro tip, use wax when putting in screws. It goes in and comes out a little bit easier. I should have done this when I did the hinges, and I wouldn't have had the trouble. I would have been able to take the box on and off. It's also very important to make sure when you're marking the holes and drilling the holes, you put them in the right spot, because if not, the lock will not open and close correctly, as happens here. But don't worry, it's a fairly easy fix, and no one will even notice that it happened. After I realized I drilled it in the wrong position, I ran over to the house and grabbed a couple of toothpicks, cut off the ends of them, put some glue on them, and shoved them in there. No big deal. All you got to do is cut them off at the top and then sand them down. And there you go, the holes are filled. One of the things we do is put a Bible verse on the boxes that are special towards that grandchild. And on this one, we did Psalms 23 verses 1 through 3. Normally we'll put these on the top of the box, but since I did the Burl, I'm not going to be able to. I think it would look too crowded. So all we're going to do is put the name on the top. You'll see that in just a minute. Now it's time for everyone's favorite part, and that's the finish. We're going to use some Rubio Monocoat. I don't have the hardener for it, so we're just going to put the oil on it. It just takes a little bit longer to dry is all it is, about 72 hours rather than 24 hours. This is one of my favorite times in a project besides designing something. Being able to put the finish on and watching it pop just blows me away. This top nailed what I was going for, that elegance. I think that Burl and that black resin inlaid into the top with those angled corners just hits perfectly. Are there a few things I'd change about the box? Yes. But that's what it's all about, designing something, building it, and learning from it. And I learned a lot. I had a lot of firsts in this video. It's the first time I've used box hinges like this, and it was extremely difficult, but I got it done, and the box closes great. It was the first time I integrated the laser into making one of these boxes for the inside there where I put the letters. It's the first time I've used a Burl resin inlay on the top. It's the first time I've used those little facets on the top there. So there's a lot of firsts, and I enjoyed it. I also enjoyed making this video for you guys. I appreciate everything you guys do for me. If you could, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe if you think I deserve it, and until next video, stay cool.